The ocean swallowed secrets that night, but one refuses to stay buried. What if the iceberg was only the final stroke of a plan written in the stars? Listen closely, the truth glimmers beneath the waves, waiting for eyes that dare to see. The RMS Titanic left Southampton on April the 10th, 1912, a floating palace of iron and ambition. At 882 feet long, she carried 2,224 souls, millionaires in diamond chokers, immigrants clutching cardboard suitcases, children chasing each other through third-class corridors that smelled of fresh paint and hope. Captain Edward Smith, silver-haired and steady, stood on the bridge and believed the ship unsinkable. The White Star Line had insured the boast with 6 watertight compartments and a double bottom. For 4 days, the voyage was a dream. First-class passengers sipped champagne in the a la carte restaurant while a string quartet played ragtime. Below, steerage families danced jigs on the poop deck under a sky so clear the Milky Way looked close enough to touch. Wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride tapped out messages of love and stock tips, the spark crackling across 500 miles. Ice warnings arrived, 6 in all, but the sea was flat calm and speed meant prestige. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, lookout Frederick Fleet saw it, a pale mountain rising from black water. Iceberg, right ahead. The collision was almost gentle, a grinding shudder that woke sleeping passengers and sent champagne flutes sliding off tables. Water poured into the starboard side, flooding 6 compartments in minutes. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, walked the corridors with a clipboard, face pale as he calculated the math of doom. By 12:15 a.m., the order came, women and children first. Lifeboats swung out, half filled because no one believed the ship could die. The band played Alexander's ragtime band to keep panic at bay. Rockets flared white against the stars unanswered. At 2:18 a.m., the bow dipped, lights still blazing. The stern rose vertical, propellers clawing at the sky, then snapped in two with a sound like 1,000 rifles. 2,000 people slid into 28-degree water. The screams lasted 8 minutes. The Carpathia arrived at dawn, plucking 706 survivors from collapsible boats. The world mourned, inquiries were held, and the official story calcified. Hubris and iceberg, and not enough lifeboats, but the ocean kept its secret. Years later, a salvage diver named Elias Crow descended to the wreck in a battered submersible, chasing rumors of a locked safe in the purser's office. The Titanic lay 2.5 miles down, split open like a tin can, her grand staircase a cavern of silt and shadow. Elias's floodlights caught something wrong. A seam along the starboard hull, not the ragged tear of ice, but a perfect circle 20 feet across, edges melted smooth as glass. No corrosion, no barnacles, just a hole punched clean through steel plate thick as a bank vault. He drifted closer. Inside the wound, metal curled inward, petals of iron frozen mid-bloom. His dosimeter chirped, then screamed. Radiation, not background, not cosmic, something sharp and deliberate. Elias's gloved hand brushed the edge. The steel was warm. In 1985, the wreck should have been colder than a morgue slab. He filmed it anyway, heart hammering against his dry suit. Back on the surface, the tape vanished from the evidence locker. Elias kept a single frame, a faint glyph etched inside the circle, spirals within spirals, glowing under ultraviolet like fresh tattoo ink. He showed it to a linguist at Woods Hole who went pale and whispered, "That's not human." The woman quit the next day and moved to a town with no address. Then the nightmares started. Every survivor's grandchild dreamed the same dream. Green light pouring from the sky, voices speaking in chords no throat could make, promising the ship would open the way. Elias found a 1912 logbook in a Liverpool attic, pages brittle as moth wings. The last entry, scrawled in pencil by a stoker named James Dugan, "They came at midnight. Not men. Eyes like lanterns underwater. Said the berg was bait, said we're cargo." The inquiries never asked about the missing steel. The lookout swore the iceberg shimmered, edges too straight, reflecting starlight in colors that hurt to recall. A stewardess testified she saw a man in a silver coat walk straight through a bulkhead, leaving frost on the wallpaper. Her statement was stricken from the record as hysteria. Elias returned alone, against every sanction. He carried a Geiger counter and a prayer. The circle was larger now, big enough to swallow his sub. Inside, the glyph pulsed, slow, patient, alive. Something waited in the dark, patient as stone, older than oceans. It spoke without sound. You were warned. The gate remembers. The sub's lights died. The last thing the surface heard was Elias laughing, high and thin, like a man who'd finally understood the joke. They never found the wreck again. Satellites show smooth sand where the Titanic used to sleep. Just a perfect circle, 20 feet across, edges melted smooth as glass. In 1923, a fishing trawler out of St. John's hauled up a life ring stamped Tersi Satinmasi. Titanic, pristine mahogany, brass letters untouched by salt. The crew sold it to a collector in Boston who kept it above his mantle. Every night at 2:18, the ring spun on its hook, slow as a clock hand, while the temperature in the room dropped 30 degrees. The collector's daughter, 8 years old, began speaking in a language that made linguists weep. She drew spirals on the wallpaper with her mother's lipstick, perfect nested circles that bled green when the moon was new. By 1947, the ring was gone, vanished from a locked museum case. Security footage showed only static, a green flare and the faint outline of a child's handprint on the glass. That same year, a U-boat surfaced off Greenland, crew babbling about a city of light beneath the ice. The logbook, recovered by the Danes, described a hull twice the Titanic's length, seamless, humming like a beehive. The last page was a charcoal sketch, the same spiral, signed Dugan. In 1963, the USS Thresher imploded 200 miles east of Cape Cod. Divers sent to the wreckage found a single plate of steel fused to the sub's sail. Titanic steel, identified by the mill markings. The plate was warm. The Navy sealed the report. The families were told pressure failure. One widow received an anonymous package, a child's mitten, salt stiff, embroidered with the White Star burgee. Inside was a lock of hair that glowed under black light. The pattern repeated, quiet as snowfall. A container ship in 1989 lost a 40-foot section of hull overnight. The cut edge dripped molten when they hit the water. A Japanese research sub photographed a perfect circle on the seafloor, 882 feet long. The Titanic's exact length, outlined in bioluminescent algae that spelled words in no known alphabet. The footage aired once on NHK, then disappeared from every archive. In 2029, a satellite array over the North Atlantic caught a pulse. A microwave burst in the exact shape of the spiral, repeating every 2.1 hours. Astronomers traced the signal to a point 1.2 light-years out, a red dwarf that shouldn't exist on any chart. The star blinked, once deliberate. Ground stations recorded a single frame of telemetry. The Titanic, intact, sailing through vacuum, portholes lit from within by green fire. Passengers waved. No one knows who leaked the image. It spread across darknet forums, then vanished. The few who saved it woke to find their drives wiped, their walls etched with the spiral in frost that never melted. One coder in Reykjavik carved the glyph into his arm with a soldering iron. Before he bled out, he typed a final post. They're still on schedule. April 15th, 2112, same time, same place. Bring lifeboats. The ocean is patient. It keeps its appointments. April 14th, 2112, the new Titanic. A fusion-powered ark carrying 12,000 colonists to Proxima Centauri crossed the 48th parallel under a moonless sky. Captain Aisha Rahman ran a tight ship. Every rivet had been triple-checked. Every lifeboat could hold 200. At 11:39 p.m., the forward cameras caught it. A pale wall rising from black water, edges too straight, reflecting starlight in colors that made the AI weep binary tears. Iceberg, right ahead, the lookout said, voice flat as if reading from a script older than language. Rahman overrode the autopilot and threw the engines into full reverse. The berg dissolved into green mist. Alarms died mid-chirp. The lights inside the ship shifted to the color of deep-sea vents. Passengers in the observation lounge looked up from their champagne and saw the dome overhead ripple like water. A child pointed, "Mommy, the stars are swimming." At 11:40, the hull opened, not breached, opened. A perfect circle, 20 feet across, edges blooming inward with petals of alloy that had never been in the blueprints. No sound, no decompression, just a soft inhale. The air smelled of ozone and cut grass. Through the hole stepped a figure in a silver coat, frost trailing from its cuffs. It walked the grand atrium as if gravity were optional, boots leaving no prints on the marble. Every security camera turned to face it and went blind. The ship's chronometer froze at 11:41. In the engine room, the fusion core dimmed, not failing, but listening. Engineers heard chords no throat could make, promising safe passage if the cargo was delivered. One technician, descendant of James Dugan, recognized the tune from his grandmother's lullabies. He laughed until his teeth cracked. Lifeboats launched on their own, doors cycling open like flowers at dawn. Half the pods filled with sleeping children, the other half carried nothing but the spiral, etched into every seat in glowing algae. The new Titanic rose then, slow as a bubble, shedding water in silver sheets. The ocean did not roar. It sighed, relieved. From the bridge of the rescue cutter, Carpathia II, Captain Rahman watched her ship ascend until it was a second moon, green and perfect. The last transmission was a child's voice, calm as bedtime. "We're going home now. Tell the others the gate remembers." The circle closed. The sea was glass. Satellites recorded a new star in orbit, blinking every 2.19 hours. Passenger manifests list 12,000 souls. Search and rescue found 0. The ocean kept its appointment, and the stars kept their promise. The new star settled into a slow orbit, visible only from the North Atlantic on clear nights. Fishermen called it the Lantern. Astronomers refused to name it at all. Every April 15th at 2:18 a.m., it flared green, and every radio on Earth picked up the same 8 bars of ragtime, played on strings that had drowned a century before. Children born after 2112 dreamed in chords. They woke speaking of corridors that breathed, of a captain with silver hair who offered them sweets that tasted like starlight. Their parents found frost spirals on bedroom windows no matter the season. Pediatric wards filled with toddlers drawing the circle in crayon, perfect to the millimeter. In 2047, the lantern began to descend. It came down the way a feather falls, lazy, inevitable, trailing auroras that wrote the old promise across the sky. Cargo delivered, gate satisfied. The oceans rose to meet it, not in waves but in a single smooth lift, as if the Atlantic itself stood on tiptoe. Ships found their compasses spinning gentle figure eights. Whales sang the ragtime in frequencies that cracked submarine hulls. On the anniversary, the wreck reappeared exactly where it sank, upright and gleaming, paint fresh as the day it left Belfast. The grand staircase spiraled upward into cloud, railings warm to the touch. Tourists in excursion subs circled it like moths, cameras fogging with breath that wasn't theirs. One by one the floodlights failed, and in the dark the portholes lit from within. Faces pressed to the glass, passengers in evening dress, children in sailor suits, all smiling the same small smile. They waved. The subs never surfaced. The lantern hovered above the wreck, a green coin balanced on the sea. At 2:18 the circle opened again, larger this time, big enough for cities. The water folded inward, a drain unplugged after centuries. Continents tilted. The last thing the global net carried was a live feed from a drone over the site. The Titanic ascending through the vortex, band playing on the boat deck, Captain Smith at the wheel tipping his hat to the camera. Behind him, the silver-coated figure raised a hand in farewell. Then silence. The feed cut to static, shaped like a spiral. The oceans were gone, leaving a bowl of salt and moonlight 2 miles deep. At the bottom lay a single life ring, mahogany bright, brass letters shining, Titanic. It spun once, slow as a clock hand, and stopped. The stars blinked out, one by one, until only the lantern remained. It spoke without sound, to every mind still listening. We were never the cargo. We were the key. The circle closed. The gate remembered. The story ended where it began, under a sky so clear the Milky Way looked close enough to touch. The Titanic never truly left the stocks at Harland and Wolff. In the spring of 1911, while the hull still rang with rivet guns, night watchman Samuel Gregg found the forward cargo hold sealed from the inside. The doors were dogged tight, yet the paint on the bulkhead was warm, and a low humming came through the steel like a beehive pressed to the ear. He chalked it up to boilers cooling, but the next morning the dogs were open and the hold was empty, except for a perfect circle burned into the teak decking. 20 feet across, edges fused to glass. The yard superintendent ordered it planked over and told the men to keep quiet or lose their bonuses. Plate number 401, the millionth ton of steel rolled for the Olympic-class liners, carried a flaw no spectroscope could name. When the furnaces at Barrow-in-Furness spat it out, the slab glowed green for 3 heartbeats before cooling to grey. The mill foreman logged it as heat mirage and shipped it anyway. That plate became the starboard shell just forward of the mailroom. On the night of April 14, 1912, it was the first to open. In the wireless shack, Jack Phillips tapped out CQD while Harold Bride stacked messages on the table. The spark coil crackled with interference no storm could explain, bursts of Morse that spelled the spiral in dots and dashes. Bride copied one line before the paper caught fire. "We ride the key inside the key." Phillips laughed it off as sunspots, but the burn on Bride's fingers never blistered. It stayed pale and perfect, a white circle that glowed under moonlight for the rest of his life. Below, in Boiler Room 6, fireman James Dugan shoveled coal beside a stoker no one had signed aboard. The man wore a silver coat despite the heat, face shadowed under a cap pulled low. When the collision came, the stranger didn't flinch. He laid a hand on the furnace door, and the flames inside turned green, licking upward in perfect spirals. Dugan asked his name. The answer came in a voice that wasn't sound. "I am the rivet that remembers the hammer." Then the bulkhead peeled open like curtained steel, and the sea rushed in wearing the stranger's smile. On the boat deck, Second Officer Charles Lightoller loaded collapsible D, while a woman in a beaded evening gown stood apart from the crowd. She carried no luggage, only a small mahogany box. When Lightoller offered her a place, she shook her head and opened the box. Inside was the life ring from 1923. Brass letters bright. She set it on the deck, and it spun, slow, deliberate. The woman stepped into the circle it traced and vanished between one blink and the next. The ring kept spinning until the ship lurched, then rolled overboard without a splash. In the first-class smoking room, the green baize tables slid uphill as the bow dipped. Cards scattered. Every face card showed the same spiral instead of a king or queen. Millionaire John Jacob Astor picked one up, frowning at the ink that crawled across the pasteboard. He tucked it into his breast pocket. When his body was recovered a week later, the card was still there, dry. The spiral now etched into his skin beneath the fabric. The band played until the end. Violinist Jock Hume tightened his E string one last time and saw the stranger in the silver coat standing at the rail, conducting with a finger that left trails of frost in the air. The notes came out wrong, ragtime in a minor key no human ear had invented. When the final plunge came, the musicians did not scatter. They played the ship down, bows rising and falling in perfect synchrony, until the green water closed over them like a lid. Their instruments were never found, but fishermen off Newfoundland still hear "Nearer My God to Thee" played on strings that sound underwater. At 2:20 a.m., the stern stood vertical. In the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet looked straight down the 4 smokestacks and saw light pouring up from below. Green, steady, patient. The funnels themselves were translucent, revealing corridors that had never been drawn on any plan. Passengers walked those corridors in single file, coats and nightgowns untouched by wind or water, following the silver-coated figure toward a door that opened onto stars. The wreck settled on the seabed at 2:25. The circle in the hull pulsed once, sealing itself with a sigh of molten steel. The glyph inside brightened, then dimmed to a heartbeat. For 113 years it waited. Counting rivets, counting souls, counting the slow turn of the planet toward the next appointment. The ocean kept the receipts. The Titanic did not rest. On the night of July the 3rd, 1914, the German liner Kaiser Wilhelm der Große passed over the wreck site at full steam. At 2:18 a.m., her engines stopped dead. The compass spun backward. In the chart room, the captain's coffee cup slid across the table and etched the spiral into the wood with its own heat. Below, in the mail hold, sacks of letters addressed to the dead tore open. The ink bled upward through the paper, forming words in mid-air. Return to sender. The ship drifted for 6 hours. When the engines coughed alive, every crewman had the same pale circle burned into the palm of his left hand. The marks never tanned, never aged. In 1927, a Scottish trawler snagged something heavy 2 miles west of the known wreck. The net came up full of rivets, 3 tons of them, bright as the day they were driven. Each head bore the Harland and Wolff stamp, but the shanks were twisted into tiny spirals. The metal rang when struck, a clear bell note in the key of the ragtime the band had played. The crew threw them back, but the rivets floated, bobbing like corks until they formed a perfect circle 20 feet across. Then they sank in unison, straight down, trailing green light. During the war, U-boats hunting convoys learned to avoid the 48th parallel. Depth charges dropped there, never exploded. They simply vanished. One submarine, U-571, surfaced after a silent patrol with its hull plating rearranged. The conning tower now carried a relief of the Titanic's profile, bow on, funnels belching green fire. The relief was warm. The crew was gone. The logbook's final entry in the commander's hand. They promoted me to passenger. In 1953, a Canadian research vessel lowered a bathysphere to film the wreck. At 12,000 feet, the cable went slack. The sphere returned empty, hatch open, interior dry. On the steel floor lay a single playing card, the Queen of Spades, but the face was a spiral. The bathysphere's chronometer read April 15th, 1912. The surface date was August 9th. The circle migrated. In 1966, it appeared on the hull of the Andrea Doria, 20 feet across, edges glowing. Divers sent to inspect found the metal peeled back like orange rind, revealing a corridor that led inward and downward, lit by portholes showing starfields that did not match any catalogue. One diver swam inside. His safety line went taut, then slack. When it was hauled up, the rope ended in a perfect circle of molten copper. The diver's mask floated beside it, lenses fogged with frost spirals. By 1985, the wreck itself had become a rumor. Robert Ballard's cameras found only sand and the occasional shoe. But the Argo's side-scan sonar painted a shadow beneath the sea floor, an exact outline of the Titanic, upright, intact, 200 feet deeper than physics allowed. The shadow pulsed every 2.1 hours. Ballard's team voted to keep diving. The vote was unanimous. No one remembered speaking. In 1991, a Soviet Mir sub photographed the circle again, this time on the port side, larger, 40 feet across. Inside, the glyph had grown teeth, smaller spirals orbiting the main one like moons. The pilot, a woman named Katia Volkov, reached out to touch the glass. The viewport rippled. Her glove came away holding a child's mitten, salt-stiff, embroidered with the White Star burgee. The temperature inside the sub rose to 28 degrees. The crew stripped to shirt sleeves and began to sing Nearer My God to Thee in perfect 4-part harmony they had never learned. The circle was patient. It practiced.